welcome to Matwork Pilates with Sally from ProAlign. This short class is going to be geared towards a level 1, which is foundation beginners. So we're going to be going over some of the basics of stability and control, and then starting to bring in some movements with your larger muscles. Remember, when you were doing this class, you were looking for good timing, control, precision and concentration. So if you need to stop this video at any time to repeat something or run over something, that's fine. It is really important that you work on good quality of movement. It doesn't matter if you don't manage 6 to 10 repetitions of something. The important part is that you do the movement well and that you don't experience any pain. That's very important. You must make sure that you're not feeling any of your symptoms or any pain or tightness or stress anywhere. So let's get started. We're going to start lying on our back. Now some of you may need to have something under your head for support if you can't quite get your neck lengthened. So maybe have a pillow nearby. Some of you might even need something bigger like a yoga block. So let's run through our setup in supine. We want to start with our thighs parallel, knees to the ceiling, and then we're going to work our way up to our pelvis. So we want to find pelvis neutral, starting off with a little tack and tilt in this direction. So just rolling over the back of the pelvis, we're going to tilt this way, rolling through center and tilting forwards. So just do this movement a few times. Try and think about driving this movement from the front of the body, rather than grabbing into the low back. Again, this should be pain-free. Then we're going to settle into the middle. And in middle pelvis, we should have our 2 front pelvic bones and pubic bone parallel to the floor. We're then going to move up and have a check-in of our rib cage. So the rib cage wants to be nice and heavy on the floor. We want to avoid this tilted position. So maybe just adjust your rib cage. And you should notice that you have a natural curve in your low back. I'm going to refer sometimes to balancing on a grape in this position. So maybe we picture one of those large green grapes, just balancing underneath the gap in our low back. Coming up now towards your shoulders, we want to feel our shoulders broad, always. That will be our main cue. So they're going to be lengthened side to side. Then coming up to our head and neck. We want to maintain a lengthened neck position. So if on the floor you feel like you're like this, then that's when you want to pop a towel underneath your head so that you can achieve a slight chin tuck, no tension at the front of the neck or chest, and length at the base of the neck. Now we've done our setup of the body, we're going to look into breathing. So place one hand on the side of your ribs and one hand on your upper chest. We're just going to start with a nice gentle breath in and out. What I want you to notice is that this is the moving hand. We want to see this hand staying still the whole time and just doing a gentle breath in and out with your lower hand. This is your diaphragmatic basolateral breath. You may want to have your hand on your tummy as well, just feeling that gentle inhale and exhale. Good. Then on our next exhale, we're going to work on connecting our deep inner unit. So whatever cue it is you've learnt with your physio already, we're going to work on that. Maybe it's pelvic floor driven, maybe it's hips coming together, maybe you have a connection of diagonal patterns through the pelvis. But we'll be inhaling, exhaling, and then connecting. Good. Then we're going to look at our knee fallout exercise. So we're set up. Inhale, exhale, connect, and then keeping your connection on your next natural exhale, just allow the knee to fall out to the side and then back to center again. We're going to do about 4 on this side. Remember, the knee doesn't come out very far. The other things we want to watch for with this exercise is that the pelvis stays level. And when I say level and still, that's exactly what I mean. So you want to picture, can I balance a tray of hot coffees on my pelvis here? If we have any rotation, It's a non-optimal movement. We have lost our control. So exhale out, inhale, return, exhale out. We're going to come on to the other side now. The other thing that we can watch for as we're doing this is we can just gently have a little palpation or press onto our upper abdomen. And your global muscles, or the outer muscles of your abdomen, are going to remain soft and squishy. So this is what we call an inner unit only exercise, which means the stability is provided by your deep unit. Pelvic floor, deep tummy, diaphragm. Now obviously I'm talking through these exercises, but you would have an exhale open, inhale to return. Hands just on the pelvis here, just to check that your pelvis is remaining nice and still. So we're probably aiming for just about 5 or 6 good quality movements through to each side, looking for rotational stability. Right, we're going to move now into our leg slide. So with this exercise, we just slide the leg away from us and then bring it back to center. Note that my foot stays in contact with the floor the whole time. I'm not lifting it up. So sliding away and back. You're going to need to either have socks on or scooch up your mat a little bit like that so that you can keep in contact with the mat. What we're looking for here is that the pelvis stays still and that we don't get a pull like this on the return. The outer unit muscles remain soft throughout, and you can alternate your legs left and right, or you can just work on one side. If you know you have a weaker side, which is from your assessment, then you can just work on that side to reinforce a good movement pattern here. Exhale, lengthen, inhale, return, exhale, lengthen. Good, we're going to bring this now up to a single knee fold. So we're going to start again lengthening. As we come back, scooch the foot all the way up to the bottom and then fold up into our half tabletop, knees over the hip, then lower. Other side, exhale, slide away, inhale, return, exhale, float up and lower. This is still an inner unit only exercise, which means that as the leg comes up and floats, this area still remains soft. Just carry on doing this exercise. So what we need to check in with is remembering that these outer global muscles, which is rectus abdominis and our obliques, are going to remain soft, and this is controlled from deep within the pelvis, this exercise. So do just keep monitoring that that's what's happening, because we're looking then for appropriate movement and appropriate control. Okay, let's have feet back to here again, looking at our arms. So we're coming to a double arm float, floating the arms to above the shoulders. With our next exhale, we're going to slowly lower the arms overhead, circle around a little bit, and come back up again. Exhale overhead, inhale round, and back to center. Exhale overhead, inhale around. Watch points here. As the arms come overhead, we want to keep a connection in the rib cage, so we want to avoid that happening. We also want to have good control here and maintain a big gap between your ear and your shoulder. So as you're on the floor, you don't want to be hunching. Now realistically, for most of us, our arms aren't going to be down here on the floor. They're probably going to be about here. Circle around and up. Now we're going to add our leg slide in. So as we exhale, the arms and legs go together. Inhale, come back up to the ceiling. Exhale. Inhale, come up. So now we've got upper and lower limbs moving together simultaneously, looking for fluid movement. Exhale, lengthen. Inhale, coming back around. Checking in again. You continue, guys. Checking again that your pelvis and rib cage remain nice and stable. Inner unit only. So no gripping with your outer muscles. Exhale, open. Inhale, coming back. Exhale, open. Inhale, coming back. Now we're going to add some arms to that knee fall out we did at the beginning. So left knee will fall out, right arm comes in the opposite direction. And back up. Exhale, slowly open. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, opposite arm leg. Inhale, back to center. Again, continue. We're just watching that this pelvis stays really still as we do this. So opposite arm leg, flat platform, coming back to center, inhaling. Okay. Coming now into using or recruiting our outer muscles now as we come into knee folds too. So once again, check your setup. Inhale, prepare. Exhale, gather your deep tummy. Inhale, pause. Exhale, float one knee up, tabletop. Inhale, pause. Exhale, deepen your core connection. Drag the second leg up into tabletop. Inhale, pause. Exhale, lower one. Inhale, pause. Exhale, lower two. Inhale, pause. Exhale, move. Inhale, pause. Deepen and float. Inhale, pause. Exhale, lower. So we're working through a up, up, down, down exercise. Our watch points here are with that second leg. We really want to focus on stabilizing before the knee lifts. If you are feeling a bulge or thud or this kind of motion happening, that's a non-optimal movement. So we need to work on that to correct things. So maybe today you just stay with a single leg and that's okay. If not, we need to recruit more, maybe pelvic floor. Think of our hips coming together a bit more with our recruitment. Maybe slide that toe towards your bottom a little bit more before it floats up. For those of you that are a little bit more advanced, you can actually lift your leg from this position without scooping it in. And that's going to put more of a challenge through your midsection. So we have up, up, down, down. If you are a little bit more lordotic in nature, you may need to just tilt the pelvis back, squash onto that grape a little bit. But none of this work that we'll do today will be in what we call full imprint, where we squash the low back onto the floor. So we've always got that little envelope or that little space just underneath the low back. Okay, so we're going to give the front of the body a break for a second as we come into bridging. So this is articulation bridging. Starting again in our normal setup, we're going to tilt the pelvis. Now we do push the low back onto the floor. And then we squeeze our bottom muscles and peel up one joint at a time into our bridge position. Now just watch here, guys, that we don't come up too high. Rib cage is still on the floor. Inhale here and then peel down one joint at a time into your supine line. So we have inhale, tilt and curl up. Now I know I'm looking at you when I'm talking to you, but don't turn your head to the side with this exercise. Keep it in neutral. Also, if you have been working with something under your head, you may want to remove it for this exercise so that you don't have too much pressure on your neck as you come into bridge. What we want to avoid with this is coming up too high and having that position, or lifting with the hips too much and flaring the ribs. So you want to think tuck under and connect the ribs to the pelvis. So these little imagery points of low ribs to pelvic bones are really useful to have a watch on. Curling and coming up, curling and coming down. Good. Last exercise here is going to be abdo prep. So I'm going to walk you through this. This is your miniature upper abdominal crunch. starting with your elbows wide, think of a long line from one elbow all the way through to the other. And then drop your chin a little bit. We're going to activate our deep tummy and then just hover the head off the floor. Take the weight of your head in your hands. Then with your next exhale, take all your awareness here and think of just sliding the rib cage towards the pelvis. Hold and lower all the way down. So we have inhale, exhale, collect your deep tummy. Inhale, exhale, drop the chin and slide. Inhale, hold, exhale, lower. So watch points here as you continue your exercise. We want to avoid chin poke. We want to avoid doming of the abdomen as you come up. I also want you to avoid here tilting the pelvis backwards. So we want to keep you in a nice neutral position. So we're inhaling, exhale, tilt, glide, inhale, exhale, lower. Inhale, exhale, drop, glide. Checking that we're flat. Deep tummy is connected before we move. Drop the chin, come up, take the weight of the head back. Maybe picture squashing your chin down on a large ripe peach. Okay, we're going to change positions now. So that's your supine work done. We're going to move now and look at 4-point kneeling or quad ped. Now this is quite a difficult position to set up correctly, so we'll go through setup together. So coming onto your hands and knees, we want to make sure that the knees are underneath the hips and that we have our wrists, elbows and shoulders stacked in a straight line. Make sure you're not working with your hands over here. If your wrists are a little bit sore in this position, once again you can roll your towel and rest the wrists on the end of it, so that decreases the amount of wrist extension. Alternatively, you can roll your mat up and rest the wrists on here. So, working through spinal setup, we need to find spinal neutral again. So maybe having a little tilt of your pelvis forwards and back. Then have a feeling where the rib cage is. When we're set, we want to have an in curve, out curve, in curve, with the head and neck drawing up and away. We then want to focus on our breathing into the base of the rib cage again, and also looking at connection in our deep tummy in this position. So we have deep tummy connect and breathing. Then we're going to come into shoulder blade and scapular control. So from this position, just allow your breastbone to lower and then push up and away. Allow it to lower. Exhale, up and away. Inhale, lower. Now note that my spine is remaining still, and this is a pure shoulder blade movement. We want to avoid spine wobbling around. We also want to keep the elbows straight, so I'm not bending and coming into a push-up. I've got my arms strong and locked, and I'm just feeling my shoulder blade moving around the rib cage into what we call protraction and retraction. Feel that strength running from the fingertips up towards the shoulder blades. Good. Coming to finish now in your push position, we're going to come into an arm slide and float. So we think I'm going to move my left arm, feel a connection from your right arm across the body to the left knee, and then take your hand forwards. Come back in again, swapping sides, right arm, come back in. As we do this, you want to maintain a flat shoulder platform. So I'm just going to show you an example of what not to do. You don't want to drop into your shoulders here. We also need to be constantly scanning through the spine to make sure that we don't end up in a extended position or that we haven't tucked our bottom under and that we're working in a flexed position. So nice and controlled, arm float. I like to work with my thumb uppermost as well, so that helps to open into the shoulder joint. Oops, I'm going to get blown away. Gentle lift and back. And now we're going to challenge with our lower limbs. So we stabilize again and then slide the toe away and come back in. Other side, stabilize and slide. So our watch points here are that we don't open the pelvis, that we don't drop into the pelvis, but the big one is that we don't slide over to the side. So from a front-on view, it would look like this. We'd be falling over. But we want to make sure that our center of mass stays directly over our knees here. So alternating, arm and then leg. Imagine gliding your leg maybe through some thick sticky treacle. Have a real sense of lengthening your leg out of your hip socket as you do this exercise. You might want to feel your glutes working a little bit, so these muscles at the back. To finish off, we're going to come into some spinal mobility. So this is our cat, cow and tail wag. So we're looking for movement through the spine here. So we're going to start dropping the tail and flex up through the spine, pushing up really high. Take a breath here, and then come back in the other direction, and looking forwards. Come back through neutral, tucking under, coming back through neutral, and extending. As we tuck and tilt, continue. You want to think of pubic bone and navel, or pubic bone and sternum or breastbone coming towards each other and away from each other. Again, drive this movement from the front of the body, not from the back. We can also add in a little concept of trying to push our hands away from the knees and then trying to bring our hands towards our knees. Finishing now in neutral. And we're just going to come into a little tail wag, left and right. So we're shortening in one side of the waist, lengthening in the other, shortening and lengthening. Good. Okay. So that's the end of our 4-point series for today. Okay, now we're going to finish off this class in standing. So let's start off running through standing alignment and posture. We're going to work with our feet in parallel and underneath our hip joints. We want to find our tripod foot alignment, which is even weight bearing, first toe joint, fifth toe joint and heel, forming a triangle or tripod. Maybe have a little sway left, right, and finish in between your feet. A little sway forwards and back, finishing in between your feet again. Take your awareness now to your knees and just soften them. And then coming up to your hip bones. We want our hip bones to sit over the side of the ankles here. A lot of us stand with them in front of our ankles, so we want to just adjust them back again. Coming up then to our pelvis and finding pelvis neutral. So have a few little tiny tucks and tilts forwards and back, and then finishing in a centered position with two pelvic bones and pubic bone nice and flat. And facing forwards. Coming then to our setup of our rib cage, bring your breastbone to sit over your pubic bone here. So again, we want to avoid that kind of alignment. Once we're lifted here, we then broaden our collarbones and imagine being pulled up from the base of the skull. So you'll actually have a slight chin tuck here. In this position, just check in again with where your breathing is. So low side of rib cage and the tummy. And a small activation in your deep tummy. Our first exercise is going to be dumb waiter, and we're looking at stability of the shoulder girdle. So bringing your hands forwards here, we're going to open and close. So just start with me and then I'll give you some more pointers as we go along. So as we go through this exercise, we want to keep breadth through the collarbones, nice and broad. Our shoulder blades are going to stay still on the body. So just ensure this isn't happening. We want to keep the rib cage connected. And again, avoiding any forwards tilting of the rib cage. We will exhale as we open, inhale as we return. And note how far forward my arms are of my body, here. I don't want to be working with them back here and too much stress on the front of my shoulders. So we're looking at stability of the shoulder blades, but a rotational movement in the shoulder joint here. Going to move on to our next shoulder exercise. So float your arms to in front of you. Again, watch that you're stacked and that you haven't done this as your arms lift. Stay on top of yourself. We're then going to exhale, float one arm up, inhale back through center, exhale, float another arm. You continue. What we're looking for is a big gap here, ear to shoulder. We want to think of a nice sense of heaviness through the shoulder blade, dropping down towards the opposite sit bone. So nice and heavy. Exhale in order to keep the ribs down so that we remain stacked. Remember guys, we want to avoid this position. Losing all control into our rib cage. Your shoulders might be a little bit tight and your movement might only look like this. And that's absolutely fine. Just work with a nice sense of floating and a lightness through your movement. Exhale, lengthen. Inhale, back. Exhale, lengthen. Inhale, back. Once more per side. And then we're going to start to look at rotation with a bow and arrow style movement. So with your arms ahead, we're going to draw one hand back to the breastbone and encourage a rotation. The head will follow, other arm stays to the front. Return back and reach. Draw the hand in and encourage rotation. With this exercise, as you continue going right to left, again, we want to remain stacked. So from side on, we want to make sure that we're not bending backwards as we twist. The hips aren't coming forwards, and that we have a rotation through the chest and then the pelvis. So we've got full body rotation happening here. We want to have as much pull back with the elbow as we have reach forwards with the arms. And back to center. Rotate. And back to center. Check in again, make sure you've got your deep tummy activated. Just check in and make sure that you're still breathing as well, that you're not holding your breath. Good. Moving on now to some more functional movements, we're going to look at the squat and then a lunge. So I'm going to teach you this from side on. Our feet will be shoulder width, toes pointing out maybe a little bit. Now we want to find that spinal stack, which is pubic bone, navel, breastbone on top of one another. You're then going to imagine that you have a rod running through your hips, and we're going to pivot through that rod, and then continue with a bend. Coming up again and return to center. Pivot and then bend. Coming up. Ensure a nice long spine. So as I come down here, I'm bending deeply into my hip joints. I'm feeling wide at the back of my hips, and the gap between my pubic bone, navel and breastbone is remaining the same. We want to avoid this position. That's not a good squat. Alternatively, we might have good pelvis and then flex again at the top. Again, that's something we want to be avoiding. We want to feel the glutes load as we come into our squat position. Nice and slow, come up. From the front, we want to see our knees, shins and feet moving in the same direction. So just check in and make sure you don't have this picture happening. Or more so, this picture. Everything wants to move forwards. Tilt of the pelvis, body, thighs, shin and feet. And that's our squat pattern. We're going to look now at a lunge pattern. If you need to, you can place your hand on the wall, on the chair next door, or if you have something like this, you can pop your hand on the railing. We're going to set up in a split stance position, most of your weight on your lead leg. Your rear foot, the heel will be lifted. Again, what we're looking for, similar to the squat, is a nice long spine and a small bend into this lead leg, and then come up again. From the front, the pelvis will just tilt forwards, and then we come up again. Coming forwards, nice long spine, and then up. We just want to make sure that the pelvis doesn't drop or rotate. So again, it's quite a pure movement. Pivot through that imaginary rod, and then just lower into that lead leg and come up. Pivot and lower. Our weight comes down through this front leg. So just watch, guys, as you do this, that we're not taking our weight backwards. Our rear leg is there for stability as we bend and come up. Let's swap legs. Other leg forwards, other one up on our toes, pivot and bend and come up. Tilt, bend and come up. Tilt, bend. Again, watching. I've always got my fingers here checking where my spine is to make sure I'm not bending, or that I'm not extending, or that my bottom isn't tucking under. Remember, as you go through these classes, these little points to hold on to are really important, because if you feel your lower two fingers come together, you will be flexing in the pelvis and the low back. If you feel your top two fingers come together, your upper body will be flexing. So if we keep them all even, we know we have a long, straight spine. Okay, let's look at some balance now. So we're going to start with our feet close together and just feel where your pelvic bones are. We're going to slowly transfer all of our body weight onto our right leg, release the knee and see if we can balance. You might need to pop your toe down, toe touch support. And we're just going to look again, have I got spinal stack? Or did my balance look like this? So we want to make sure that the pelvis moves over, everything is stacked, and then we balance. Coming back again and onto the other side. Drive with the pelvis and then balance. We should have our toes down on the floor. You want to feel your big toe pressing down onto the floor. Transfer, balance. Good. If you feel comfortable, then just place your arms by your sides. Checking in again. Neutral, stacked, broad, lengthened. Just watch as well that you don't have your knees snapped back into hyperextension. It's slightly soft. And remember, you can keep on popping your toe down for a bit of extra support if you need to. This is a nice exercise to do in front of the mirror. Or maybe, if like me, you're training outside, you can see yourself in the patio doors. I hope you have enjoyed this level 1 class. When you do this at home, you can do it anywhere. Living room, on your decking like me, in the kitchen even. All you need is a mat, maybe something to go under your head for this particular class. You can do it in the 3 separate segments, or you can run it in its entirety. I hope you've enjoyed it, and please feel free to email me if you have any questions.